Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Fantasy Overtime, and yes, this is a Faith No More shirt. Be jealous. Anyway, you know what it is, Fantasy Overtime, going over last week's sleepers, going over the guy you didn't want to play last week or in future weeks, and of course, my Oy Vey of the week. But anyway, let's get into the sleepers. So starting off this past week, a couple of guys you may want to keep an eye on due to injuries and due to the fact they're just getting some consistent minutes and putting up some consistent numbers the past week or two. We're going to start out with Trey Burke of Utah. He is a point guard. It's owned by about 34.7% of ESPN.com fantasy owners. He's had a decent 4-game stretch here. He's a guy who really, he's kind of been hit or miss the past couple years. You weren't sure what minutes he was going to get, but with the news that Dante Exum is not going to be coming back this season, his injury is more severe than they were expecting. Also with the fact that he's been getting the majority of the six-man minutes for Utah this season. He's not a bad pickup. His season averages are only about 11.3 points per game, 2.2 rebounds, 2.8 assists, but he is giving you about 1.7 3-pointers made per game, which is a nice number. In these past few games, he's been averaging anywhere between 2 to 3 made threes a game. And, you know, in a course of a 4-game week, you're looking at 10 3-pointers, and 10 3-pointers can definitely sway you an opportunity to win that particular category. He's also been in double figures in points. I think I mentioned that. His assist numbers have started to be more in the middle to upper range of 4 to 6, give or take, is kind of the range you'll see him drop every single game. He'll give you a couple rebounds, a couple steals. His field goal percentage isn't great, so definitely watch out for that. And he doesn't get to the free throw line that much, but when he does get to the free throw line, he's only, if he shoots terribly, he's only going to have a couple of attempts. So that won't kill you during your week for your overall field goal percentage and free throw percentage. But anyway, let's get to our second player, and it's Mirza Teletovic, guy you've seen play for Brooklyn last year and a year before. He plays this year for Phoenix. He's a power forward, and he's only owned by 25.4% of ESPN fantasy owners. He's kind of been on an uptick lately. He's been getting some of the minutes with, Lauer and Alex Len for the time that Tyson Chandler's been missing. So this is definitely a guy you want to pay attention to. He's been getting up into the double-figure points the past 6, 7, 8 games, give or take. He'll give you some assist numbers here and there. He generally gives you a few rebounds. His field goal percentage isn't perfect, but he's also a guy who can swing you a 3-point category, especially if you're looking to add him late in the week, especially even if you add him early in the week. This past in week 6, for instance, he had 8, 12, 15 3-pointers made. And that's pretty huge, to be perfectly honest. He's another guy who isn't going to wow you with his free throw percentage, but once again, he's only giving you 1 to 2 attempts per game. So don't expect anything crazy on that end to really hurt you. His averages for the year are only 9 points per game, 3.2 rebounds per game, 1.1 assists. But he's averaging 2.3 3-pointers made per game, even though when Tyson Chandler's been around, he hasn't been getting the same amount of minutes as other players. So definitely look at him as an option. And if he's still hitting 2.3 3-pointers per game, he's definitely an option as a guy you keep rotating in week to week, depending on how well he's playing, and you can also replace him. But he's definitely a guy to always keep an eye on if you're trying to win that 3-pointer category. So anyway, let's get into our second favorite segment of my particular show here. The guy you didn't want to play this last week, The guy you don't want to play in the future, though I think he got an injury recently, so that may change. However, John Wall, obviously Wizards point guard, averaged last week 28.5 points, 10 assists, 5.25 rebounds per game, and almost 4 steals per game. And he also, for John Wall, which this is a crazy stat for him, made 2 3-pointers per game. Normally, he's a terrible 3-point shooter. His field goals percentage was around 53%, and his free throw percentage was above 80. The guy was kind of a beast last week. So watch out for him in the future. He may end up costing you some games with him being on the opposite team. If he's on your team, congratulations. And you're kind of a dick. Anyway, now to my favorite segment of the week. Oy Vey. Robin Lopez, ladies and gentlemen. It's the center for the New York Knicks this year. No, he is no longer a Portland Trailblazer. He started off the year averaging anywhere between 25 and 30 minutes a game. Now his minutes are starting to dip under 20. Not that great. Season averages are about 7.2 points per game, 5.6 rebounds, averages about a block a game as well. But over the past 10 games or so, his minutes have dropped. As I mentioned, his points have dropped, his rebounds have dropped. They've really been giving Porzingis most of the minutes and kind of moved Carmelo to a 4 role in a lot of situations. So that's kind of given Robin Lopez the short end of the stick, especially being that he hasn't been playing as well as he could. Anyway, this has been NBA Fantasy Overtime. You can definitely like this video, subscribe to my channel, The Analyst 32, and give me a follow on Twitter at TheAnalyst32 as well. We will see you next week in another episode of Fantasy Overtime, and good luck in your fantasy week games.